Hi, my name is Ted, and today I'm going to be talking to you about 5 more ways to expose faith healers. Last week I talked about the first 5. This week I'm going to be talking about another 5. There are other ways as well, but I'm going to kind of just keep it to 10. For today, the first way to expose a faith healer is to compare it to hypnotism. Now, some people believe that hypnotism is of the devil. Some people believe there's no such thing as a trance in hypnotism, and others believe there is a trance that does take place. But any way we look at it, even if you think it's demonic or if you think it's nothing, it's just all in the brain, no matter what you think, there are similarities that go on between hypnotism and faith healing. The very first hypnotists, at least the ones they say that began hypnotism, Franz Mesmer. And Mesmer believed that we had the fluid within us that could be magnetized and bring about healing if you magnetized it and got that fluid in the right areas. And what he would do is he put magnets over people, and as he did, people would start shaking and convulsing. First of all, wherever the magnet was, but also their whole bodies might go into some kind of shaking. And this was a sign that the magnet was working in the people. Now, magnet therapy continues today, at least as far as believing that you can take magnets and bring about healing. Mesmer was proven false by no other than Ben Franklin and a group of his peers who in France decided to check this out, and they did a 7-year study. There are a lot of rumors and a lot of stories go around about people being healed, and they decided to check it out. And they studied it for 7 years, and one of the studies I really like because it comes to the same conclusion I've come with a long time ago. And what he did is he blindfolded a woman and put her in a backyard and said, one of these trees is magnetized. And they had Mesmer's helper magnetize one of the trees. And she was blindfolded and she walked around. She was going to find the one that's going to be magnetized. Sure enough, she walks around and finds a tree and starts shaking because this is the tree. Problem is, she walked away from the real magnetic tree and walked towards another tree entirely, thus concluding with other evidence and something that's gone through the history of hypnotism, concluding that it is not anything, any power that is outside of the person themselves, but rather it is brought about because of the expectation of that person getting magnetized. Now, eventually, this whole shaking and convulsing changed into a trance. How did that happen? A Catholic priest a generation later didn't know, or at least the people in his group didn't know, that when you hypnotize people, you're supposed to shake. And one person fell asleep. And that rumored everywhere. And so people believed that it was a trance that people went into. And thus, we have today, you go into trance. The parallels of hypnotism to faith healing go beyond the shaking and beyond the sleeping. And it goes into something called people's expectations. What they expect to happen, happens. In other words, if you expect to go down, and I've covered this in other videos, if you expect to go down, you're gonna go down, even if you don't want to, because your expectation is driving you in ways that you don't expect. That's a good one. Compliance is absolutely necessary in the world of hypnotism. If you watch a hypnotist on a stage, they will take out the people who are not compliant. They'll have them removed from the stage. If somebody is laughing or goofing around, they're out. If somebody doesn't look or seem compliant, they're out. Until you have just a group of compliant people. Then the hypnotist does his or her work. And this is also true with faith healing. Many of the stages will divvy out those people who are not compliant or who, quote unquote, are not feeling a healing going on.
Jody Dean. Jody. Jody. Dean. Jody Dean. No, she should be right there on your right side. Right side. Glory to God. Come on up here. No, that's not her. Hallelujah. No, that's not her. Jody. In the blue. Dean. Glory to God. That might be her. Here it comes. Okay, she lives at 4267 Masterson. 4267 Masterson. I can see the angels of God all around your house. And she's praying for her daughter Joy, who's allergic to food. I'll tell you, God is going to give Joy complete deliverance. What you've been praying for, she's not going to have any more eating disorders. Before 86 is over, she's going to gain about 15 pounds, and you're going to rejoice. You're going to know. I tell you, she got shocked. She got shocked.
Number 7, second one for today, expose scandals. There are plenty of scandals with faith healers. You have multiple marriages, you have divorces, you have affairs, you have drugs, alcohol, stealing money from the churches, bankrupting churches while they make it wealthy. And if you don't have a scandal with your favorite faith healer, look a little bit more carefully, because pretty much most of them have some kind of scandal in their background. Does exposing a scandal really help, though? Does that really expose that faith healer as being false? You will have followers who will defend the wolves. They will say, oh, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. In other words, they're justifying that person, saying, yeah, they have the problems. Yeah, there's a problem, but so what? We all have problems. You'll have other people who call you evil for exposing something like that. Why do they do that? And this is not just for faith healers. This is across the board. There are so many people who will step up and try to defend wolves. They will defend child molesters. They will defend all kinds of terrible people, as long as those terrible people provide some kind of benefit to the group. And when they provide a benefit to the group, many people have a very difficult time saying that person should be exposed. What they did was evil. And they will do everything they can to try to protect and come to their defense. It's a common behavior found in scandals that go on. Another problem with exposing scandals for these faith healers is that people tend to forget. Peter Popoff was exposed by a magician. And Peter Popoff didn't know that he was exposed until James Randi was on Johnny Carson's show exposing him to the world. His money plummeted. His ministry plummeted. He went bankrupt. Years later, he started his ministry again, and today he has a flourishing ministry. Why? Because people forget. People want something that he gives. And this is probably the biggest reason faith healers can get by with some of the nasty things they do. People want to believe that God is doing something so powerful. They want to believe so much that they're willing to turn their eyes away from the truth. Number 8, the 8th way to expose faith healers is to expose the tricks they use. Magicians direct attention of the audience. Faith healers direct the attention of their followers. The number one thing they don't want you to do is look at follow-up. Why? Because over and over again, follow-up reveals that most, not all, most of their healing on stage does not last. So they don't want people to know that. Benny Hinn wrote in an article that he started following up, but people got mad at him for asking, were you healed? Because they would say, well, I told you I was. There's something wrong with this, and I'll tell you what's wrong with it. If I'm healed by anybody from cancer, I am thankful. I will go out of my way to say thank you. I will go out of my way if my wife is saved from death because of Benny Hinn. I will say thank you, Benny Hinn. But to get angry? There's something fishy about this whole story. I'll tell you what it is. He knows that most people are not getting healed from him. And the ones who are can easily be explained by a placebo effect. All right. Faith healers direct attention away from follow-up. They direct attention away from the worst cases. So in a Benny Hinn crusade, Catherine Kuhlman crusade, the people in the worst wheelchairs, the ones who are definitely the worst off, are put off to the side. You want the real, regular, cheap wheelchairs all over the place because people will get out of those. But those expensive wheelchairs, be careful about them. Those are the people who live in those wheelchairs. So you want to direct attention away from the worst cases and direct attention to wheelchairs, the other wheelchairs, the cheap wheelchairs, the rented ones. In fact, some, Benny Hinn, I'm convinced, rents them. And I know Catherine Kuhlman used to. They rent wheelchairs and bring them in, and when people are walking out of their cars, even if struggling a little bit, put them in a wheelchair, bring them in. Those will be the people who feel something going on and be on stage later. And guess what? Their wheelchairs will follow them on stage. Ushers will make sure that they get up there. And on stage, they will point out, is that your wheelchair? Well, yeah, in fact, one case I saw some ladies looking, it's like, what's that doing up here? She had no clue it followed her. But that's what goes on in these stages, and that's something that a magician would do. And make sure those wheelchairs are seen. Why are wheelchairs so important? Wheelchairs are important because you will never see something physically happen to somebody. You will hear story after story after story. Benny Hinn in his crusades will say, you're going to feel electricity, you're going to feel warmth, you're going to feel heat in your body. That means you're getting healed. No, it doesn't. It means, and I'm going to get into placebo effect here in a minute, it means a placebo effect has gotten you, and the voice of authority has done something in you. A confident voice of authority has helped you to see something is happening and feel something, and you're going to feel it. And those people are the first ones on stage. But then they go home and they say, I've lost my healing, because they go to the doctor and find out it's still there. But Jesus did miracles. You could see arms straighten out. You could see backs straighten out. You won't see that in these crusades. What you'll see is a wheelchair. And I had one commenter say, could you ever, he was trying to defend Benny Hinn. He says, could you ever raise people out of wheelchairs? And I wrote to him and said, yeah, a lot of people. Because most of those people can walk already to some degree. They might have pain, but they can walk. There's a pseudo-explanation that takes place. Magicians like pseudo-explanations. They'll say, oh, that's the spirit, but in reality, it's not. In reality, it's a trick they did. If somebody stumbles on stage because they cannot walk properly and they really haven't been healed, the faith healer says they're learning how to use their new legs. Or they're drunk in the spirit. Neither one are true. Those are pseudo-explanations. Magicians use pseudo-explanations to help us get away from the real event and see something mystical. Magicians use our assumptions. A rabbit in a hat, they show you an empty hat. What you don't see is there's a false bottom with a rabbit underneath that false bottom. But you, because you assume it's empty, are mystified that a rabbit comes out of it. Faith healers use our assumptions. You assume healing is going to take place, so they can get by with a lot because you assume healing is going on. So they can take somebody out of a wheelchair that can already walk and watch them walk around a stage, and you will be convinced they have been raised up by the power of God. But unfortunately, you're getting a pseudo-explanation, and you are assuming something that is not true. Okay, does it work? Does exposing this work? I think it does to some degree, but honestly, audience will believe what they expect. They will also believe what they want to believe. The ninth way, fourth way today, the ninth way to expose a faith healer is to compare what they're doing to placebo effects. A placebo effect is very powerful, especially with pain. It can relieve pain, usually temporarily, but sometimes longer. About 80% of the people coming forward and testifying on stages that they are healed, the healing is pain-related. One guy got up on a stage and said, "I have flat feet." And the pain went away. God healed it. And so I took off my shoes. They're still flat, but they're healed.
Yeah, well, I still don't seem to have an arch, but there's no, they feel different. I've had, they've given me a fair amount of pain in the past.
They're not healed. They're not cured. What happened is the pain went away. And that is a placebo effect, because the placebo effect can work well with pain. It works with a lot of disease, surprisingly, an amazing amount. And it can do temporary relief. Does it work? Exposing the relationship to placebo effects. I think it's very informative, it's very interesting, but the thing is, most people have no clue how powerful a placebo effect is. And because they don't know, when they see a placebo effect in progress, in process, working, because they don't know what it is, they're going to assume it is God working. When in fact, if they knew about placebo effects, they would say, well, if God is working, he's using a placebo effect. And I see no problem with that. But that's another story. Finally, reveal comparison to cults. There is in cults elitism. There's disdain for people outside of the group. You're going to hear this from a lot of charismatic leaders. There is a creation of fear for leaving the group. There is an unconventional teaching within cults. I remember talking to somebody who was in a group that is considered a cult, and I was talking to this person years ago, and I said, everything you say about God, you bring down to human level. And everything you say about humans, you bring up to God level. Well, this is what's going on in the faith healing movement. We are now gods who can speak worlds into existence. I'd like to see you speak a world into existence. There is excessive devotion to their leaders. Cults oppose critical thinking, especially when it comes to their leader. You need to buy everything they say. I hope every one of you is able to not be critical about your leaders, but see what is scriptural and what is not. Nobody is 100%. Nobody except Jesus. He's 100%. The Bible, 100%. The rest of us were flawed. So critical thinking is imperative. It's also important for growth. This is Ted. Have a fantastic day. Looking forward to next week because I think I got a good one for you.